Hello, everyone. Welcome to SharePoint Power Hour. We are here with the business solution team from Rackspace, like we are every single week for you. And today we are going to be talking about per location views. Basically, it's going to be kind of a funny session because I'm going to tell you about a feature, and I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't use it and what you should use instead. So that'd be kind of fun. Before, like always, we're going to introduce ourselves so you can kind of get an idea of who else is on the call today. All right, so Kevin, I'll let you go first.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hughes, SharePoint architect here at Rackspace. I'm based out of Kansas City. Been with Rackspace not very long, but been working with SharePoint for many, many years. My role is to work with our customers to find out exactly what they need and hopefully come up with a SharePoint solution to fix all the ills.
Awesome. Ryan?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Keller. I am based out of very windy northern Colorado today. My role on the team is to make SharePoint a little less SharePointy and a little more like, what you guys want to make it look like. I'm the branding guy on the team, been working with SharePoint for, I don't know, I always lose track these days, 7 years or so, and been with Rackspace for almost 3 years now. Before that, it was with the SharePoint 911 group, and it's been lots of fun.
All right, Steven.
Hi, I'm Stephen Wilson. I am with the Business Solutions team as well. I work more on the administrative side of things normally, not doing as much of the business solutions, but where I come into the Business Solutions team is after the installation of SharePoint, helping people sort of get rolling in that that initial phase where they're just clicking on buttons, trying to figure out what everything does. I can help you with laying out your SharePoint site so that things aren't going to bite you later when you make some of the decisions about how to put departments and document libraries and everything together.
All right, thanks so much. And I am Joelle Farley, also on the Business Solutions team. I work a lot with the out-of-the-box features, also some planning and design. I am based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I am looking forward to talking to you guys about per location views. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so I am going to get my screen share going here. And it looks like, can you guys see that okay? All right, thanks so much. All right, so we're going to be talking about a feature that you will see in libraries and lists inside of SharePoint. And it's one of those, I have a couple of different things, especially depending on how much time we have to talk about, but the first thing I want to talk about is per location views. It's probably one of the lesser known features of a list or library. It's not something that we see used a ton, but it's worth just kind of understanding what it does, and specifically, and for this session, to understand what it doesn't do. We'll kind of go through and look at a couple of different things, and then I'm going to go back and just show you some other options you have for things like to accomplish what you would think the per location views should do. We do have, I am referencing a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today is documented in a blog by our wonderful leader, Laura Rogers. So I will put that in the showcase towards the end of the session today. And then also Cameron Dwyer, I hope I'm saying that correct, is another SharePoint blogger that has a good article as well, or a good blog as well. So I'll make sure I put both of those links in there for reference. Okay, so basically, let me just tell you a little bit about what I have going on here. I have a document library inside of SharePoint. My document library has a couple different things here. So we have, on the top level, we have some folders. These are yearly folders. And if I drill down into one of these yearly folders, I then get into some additional folders. So here I have benefits managers and onboarding. And really what my goal was here is that I needed to have a different view be default here, than when I clicked on my folder and then clicked in one of these folders here, so like onboarding. I needed to have a different view here, and then I needed to have a different view at that top level as well by default. So obviously, if you create views, you can always go up here and click on them when you need them. But by default, I wanted those things to show. I didn't want to have to click on anything. So the first view that I have, I've actually created the two views already so that we have them here to go. So the first view is called year sort, and basically all I wanted it to do was sort chronologically by the name of the folder. So here, what I would want it to do is I want it to, instead of being 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015 in that order, I wanted it to start with 2015 and then go back chronologically. So that was the first thing. I wanted that to be the default view for here. And then the next thing is I have another view, so I did not want to use that necessarily down inside of one of these folders, because in this view here I have an audience view, and this is actually where I want it to group by the field here called audience. So that top level where I have the year doesn't have that. It isn't going to necessarily have that audience field. But down in this folder here, I would want to see that grouped by audience. So those are the two differences. So the question was, how do we accomplish this? Because obviously, like I said, you can always just click on it. If you create a view, you can always just click on it and have it show up like that. But I wanted us to do it by default, so we didn't always have to click on what we needed. So you would think that looking at, a quick description of what per location views are, it's basically where you can set on a different folder level or a different document set level, you can set, what the default view is for that. However, it doesn't really, like other things in SharePoint that we've all run into, it doesn't really work the way that we assume that it will. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go over to look at my library settings here. Oh, first things first, in order to be able to see the per location view option or the metadata navigation option that I'm going to look at a little bit, you do need to turn on a feature on your site. So to do that, you go to Site Settings, Manage Site Features under Site Actions, and then scroll down to Metadata Navigation and Filtering, and then just make sure that that's active. So mine's active. I don't have to click on anything, but that you want to make sure that that's active. So I go back to my library. So I'm going to go to Library Settings. And then here now, because I have that feature active under General Settings, I can see Metadata Navigation and Per Location View Settings. So if I click Per Location View Settings, then as you'll see here, basically what it allows me to do is it allows me to click on a different level. So I have my year folders and my subfolders, and then I can set the default view for that specific area. So let's say I'm going to set this here on HR documents. I want the default view to be year sort, or the only one available. Let's see. I think I actually have to do that one through. So we'll just set that as a default here first because it's at the top level. Make this the default view. Okay, and then I'm going to go to Library Settings and back to per location. So that's set there, but now let's say like I said earlier, on this level down here, on the actual 2015 level here, I want to set it so that audience is the default, so that when you click on onboarding, you see that audience grouping that I showed earlier. So I'm going to set this to no, and then here I'm going to make audience a default view at this location here. One thing I want to point out, and I don't know if this is just for me, it's just something that I noticed yesterday when I was preparing for this, but when I was in Internet Explorer and I tried to do this exact same thing, so just something to note for those that may be trying to do this. So I'm doing the exact same thing. If I try to switch to no, audience, I can't click on any of these. I thought that was kind of weird. So like over in Firefox, I can click on them and then see these options down here. But in Internet Explorer, I wasn't able to do that. So I don't know if that's just that might just be something, maybe something's wrong with my browser that I need to fix. Not sure, but just in case you run into that, you may just need to use another browser. I'm not sure if it's just something from I have the latest version of IE, so it might be something wrong with that. But just wanted to point that out real quick. All right, so back here, audience, I'm going to go ahead and make that the default view for onboarding. So make audience a default view. And then I can remove these and then click OK. So now I go back to my library. So I see that the year sort's working because I set that as the default just inside of that view. So let's go see if I click on 2015 in onboarding. Well, look at that. It didn't work. So you saw that I said it, but the problem is it didn't work. I'm not seeing it here. So that's just the first thing that just shows you that they don't really, the per location views don't really work the way that you think they would. So that's kind of an interesting tidbit. What we did realize, though, is if we turned on metadata navigation, we could get it to work, but then just the way the metadata navigation looks is a little clunky and may not be as helpful as you need. So let me go back over and turn that on so we can kind of see what that would look like. So I'm going to go to library settings, and I'm going to go to metadata navigation. And to get it to work, I just have to move content type over here, and then click OK. And then back to HR documents. So now, if I go here to 2015 and click on onboarding, now my audience thing will work. So that's one way that you could get it to work, but here's the problem I want to point out. So remember how I had on that top level, if I can go back in the library here, I could probably show it. Let's see, no, it's not going to work that way, I don't think. Yeah, so on that top level, I don't know if you remember, but I set the view so that it would sort that 2015 would be on top, and then it would sort descending in descending order. Well, if you look in metadata navigation, even though I have that set as the default in HR documents, I'm not seeing that here because the metadata navigation just sorts the way that it wants to, and there's really no way to change that unless you have some kind of, you do some kind of custom programming to it. So that's another tricky part. So yes, we can get as you can see, we can get that onboarding, we can get that audience to be the default view, the audience grouping to be the default view, like you would expect with per location views, but that sorting on the year that I had is no longer there. So as you can see, it will work, but then there's a tricky piece here. And also then you have this random content type thing down here that you have to have. And so that can be confusing. So this could be really confusing to your users depending on how it's set up. But just so you know, that's one way to get it to work is to turn on the metadata navigation. All right. So if you have any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to put them into the Q&A app inside either from YouTube, you'll be able to see that on the video. You can click Q&A. Or if you're on Google+, you'll be able to do it right there. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. So let's go ahead and move forward. So now with all of that said, you can kind of see the quirks and the issues with doing things that way. And like here's another, you can see right here. So my year sort's correct here, but then if I expand, it's incorrect over here. So just kind of pointing that out. So now I'm going to turn all of this off. So obviously per location views is not going to get me, it's not perfect. It's not going to get me exactly what I want. So let me go ahead, I'm going to turn that stuff off, and I'm going to start with something different. So I'm going to try something different this time. And onboarding, we'll re-inherit, and okay. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to look at my views here. So I have year, sort, and audience. And I'm going to change settings in my views to accomplish something very close to what I was trying to accomplish with what I thought I could accomplish with the per location view settings. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my year sort. And right now it's the default view, which is fine. And I'm going to scroll down to this folders area and expand on that. And I'm going to set it so that this view only shows up as a default in the top level folder. So that's an option here. Now, what I want to point out here is that you won't see this section, not this one right here, but like this right here. You won't see this unless you turn the management of content types on. So I'm going to do that. Let me set it, and then I'll do that really quick. Click OK. And to do that, I'm going to go to Library Settings, Advanced Settings, and then Allow Management of Content Types. I flip that to Yes. That's what's going to open up those additional options under Folder in my view. Click OK. And now what I need to do, so I have this set, year sort is the top level default. So now I want audience to be the, to show for a specific thing here. So I want audience to be a default as well, but only for items that are folders. In folders of content type folder. And click OK. And let me check my settings just to make sure it took correctly. Yep, looks like it did. So now if my the demo gods are with me, I can see here by default, I'm on HR documents, I just click it. I can see that the default sorting is correct here. So now if I go to 2015, and then onboarding, I can see that there my audience sort is defaulting there. So I am able to accomplish this using these view settings instead of depending on the per location view, and I don't have to mess at all with the metadata navigation like we were seeing earlier. So that's a pretty neat thing that you can do. So you can take this even further. As you noticed with the view settings, I can actually set it to certain content types. So let's say if for any reason you wanted to have it so that there was different types of folders people could add, and you wanted those like different levels of folders to show different views, then you could create a content type off the folder content type, add it to your library, and then whenever they add that, it would have a default view to it as well. So I can set that in just a second. Let's see. I think we have a question. All right, so Michael asked, a little off topic, have you noticed the view, and he said that, not me. Have you noticed the view menu selector disappears when shaded style is selected? Oh yes, it does. That is true. So if we have a view that is shaded, which what we're talking about here is, let me go to all documents and we'll just mess with all documents really quick. So if I go down under style, and a few of the styles actually do some weird stuff to that menu and do shaded, then yeah, you'll see there that I can no longer see the views. That is definitely, I don't want to, I guess we'll say by design. Whether they realize that was going to happen or not is a different story, but yes, that is definitely true. That's what happens when you use shaded. So yeah. So, and there might be something that where you could create like a view that is shaded without, like a custom view that is shaded without, getting rid of that. And they'd probably take something a little bit more in depth than what's out of the box, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it may take like some of Ryan's talents or something.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, like a display template or something. All right, so yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I was just talking about how you could set up additional content types. So let's go ahead. I'm going to create a new folder content type. I'm going to call this, let's see. All right, so I created a new content type. I went to my site content types. I added it as a folder so that it inherits all the stuff that a regular folder would have. I called it category folder. I could add existing columns so that it had columns tied to it by default, but for this example, I'll just leave it like that. And I go back over to HR documents, library settings, and I'm going to add this new content type. So I go add from existing, and then folder. Oops. Actually, went into custom category folder, and then click OK. So then there's category folder. And now what they could do is they could come to here and add a new category folder. And then we could set a view specifically around that. So let's say if I wanted to have the second level here, these are my category folders. Let's see if I'll And I did not want them to use the audience view by default. I just wanted the things inside of here to use the audience view. Then what I could do is I could go to library settings, back to all documents, and let's say I'll set all documents to only point to category folder. Default for that. And then I may still be doing it. I may have not done it in the right order. That's what I'll do. I'll take this off for right now. Okay. And then I could go ahead and I would add additional folders here for like the different, or I could add the documents in here and then set it so that this onboarding would show the audience view grouped. So this one, so you could basically tell that on different levels we have different things. So on the top level here, I show the order of the folders. Then on the next level, I have it just show regular view. And then on the next level, I could default it to the audience. And that's all based on things like whether I'm using a folder or if I've added a custom content type of a folder, and that kind of thing. And let's say you wanted to always use, let's say you had category folder and year folder, and you had these different folders that you wanted them to use instead of just the default library folder. You wanted to turn that off so they could not use that. Then what you could do is you can go to the library settings and go to advanced settings. And then down under folders where it says make new folder command available, I can turn that off and click OK. And back to HR documents. And then here, I can see I can't create a regular folder. I would have to use one of the content types. So that way you can kind of manage how your library works, because then if you want to make sure that the view always works correctly the way you set it up, then you can manage which folders that they're using, and then they won't be able to use that new folder there. All right. Any other questions while I kind of transition to the next thing I wanted to talk about? Feel free to put them in the chat. Do you guys have any questions or comments? Have you guys used this at all as far as my team's concerned?
I haven't, but that's actually really cool.
I haven't used it. I've told people about it, but I haven't used it myself.
Hello? I think I just got kicked off. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, let me try sharing my screen. Can you guys, are you guys seeing my screen or just me?
No, just you.
Okay, let me screen again. I think I got a message that, like an error message that just popped up all of a sudden, so hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I see you on the screen and I see the SharePoint view, so I think your screen session froze.
Okay. All right, so hopefully...
Yep, now I'm seeing your screen again.
All right. Okay, so hopefully that'll work. Yeah, so Ryan, you said you have not had to use per location views or anything like that before?
Yeah, I haven't personally, but that's a very cool concept. It'd be very useful. I could see.
Yeah, it's just funny how they talk about the per location views as the solution for things like this, and
And then
then
we didn't do it
yeah,
right.
yeah, and then the actual the actual solution is inside of the view itself. It's just funny how that's just we all know that's just what happens. All right, so some other things that I wanted to show. I'm gonna go ahead and hopefully this won't kick me out. All right. Let's see. I think I might have to. I'll switch to Internet Explorer to see this correctly. So something else I want to point out that's a feature when you're using when you have the manage metadata stuff turned on is that with your folders you have different options. So here, 2015, if I click on this folder and go to the menu, I can actually connect this folder to Outlook. So let's say if I didn't want to connect the entire library, I'm on the road or something, and I just need the documents or the information from this particular library, or let me sorry, folder. Then I can go ahead, I can click here, and connect this specific one to Outlook. My screen just froze. I don't know. I think my computer's having a fit. There it goes. As always, right? That always happens. Okay, so yes, I can go here, click here, and then connect to Outlook. So that just saves me from having to connect the entire library and then have all that stuff in Outlook that I don't really need. And then also I can change the new button order. So what that means is, let's say if, for example, I have these folders, but then let's say I have a separate area where there's an incident report that can get saved, and I only want that incident report to be available in that area. So what I could do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go to my library. I'm going to go to library settings, and I'm going to add this incident report option over. Custom, there it is. So I've added that as a content type that's available in the library. And then I'm going to add a category. We'll just add a category folder since the other one's turned off. I'll call this incident. So the goal here is right now, if I go to 2015, or let's go to 2012. If I go to 2012 and I go to File, New, I see Incident Report. And so let's say I don't want anybody to be able to put an incident report in these folders. I only want them to be able to put an incident report in the incident folder. So then what I can do here is I can go on each of these and I can do change new button order. And then I can uncheck. I think I'd already done it on that one, so that's why it's showing. And then I can go here, change new button order, uncheck those, and do it on this one. And then one more. So now here, if I want, I can go to incident, and I can go to File, New, and see that incident report's there. And if I browse back up to HR Documents, then I can go to 2014, File, New, and then Incident Report is not there. So then that way I can stop people from putting in, if I have a specific content type that needs to go to a specific folder, I can go ahead and kind of prevent them from putting it in those other folders, or kind of stop them from, or guide them to the right thing that they should be putting in there. All right. Kind of just another interesting feature there. Let's see. And of course, like we mentioned, you can always just turn folders off completely. So you can, let's say if you want to avoid having a folder level that's, folders within folders within folders, then what you can do is you could create your top level folders if you just want to have some folders here and you don't want to allow folders anywhere else, then you could just turn that feature off, and then they just have this top level where they can add folders. And you can even have it so that they can only, at this top level, they can only add them here. But then if they drill in, they won't be able to click File. See, like right here, I can't add a new folder. I can't click here, and I can't get a new folder here. So no new folders can be added in this subfolder. So you can kind of do some management like that around folders. And how many times am I going to say the word folder in this session? We should count like those like Jelly Bean games, Jelly Bean in the Jar games. Like how many times is she gonna say folder? All right, so let's see. We have about half an hour left. I figured that one was going to be pretty short, so I have a couple other things on my list here that we can kind of look at. So we have metadata navigation. I briefly kind of flew through that because we were really just showing how you needed to turn that on to do the per location views. But now let's talk about what metadata navigation can just be used for in general and where it's actually worthwhile. So as I said in the beginning, to turn that on, you have to go to your site settings and then go to manage site features and turn that on under metadata navigation and filtering, and you can activate it there. And I am going to switch over to a different site. I think I have a site where I have a bunch of stuff running for that, so just bear with me really quick. So this is a library that I basically beat up a lot, so we get into fights quite frequently, so it's a little bit of a hot mess. But I think I can give you guys a good idea of what metadata navigation is. So to turn it on and off in the library, I go to Library and Library Settings, and then Metadata Navigation Settings. And then here, what I can do is I can choose the type of things that either I can have in my navigation hierarchy, which is kind of that folder tree view that we have on the left-hand side when you turn this on. Or I can configure key filters. So you actually have a filter box where you can enter in a value and click filter, and then it will filter the library by that value. You can do either of these or both. So as you can see in my example, I have office and region, or two columns that I have in this library. So I have one column that says what office the document belongs to, and one column that says what region. And then down here under configure key filters, I have region. So I want them to be able to enter in a region, and then it sorts the whole library by that. And then I can go ahead and click OK, and then you can configure automatic column indexing for this list using the metadata navigation. So you can turn that on and off down here as well. And we have it automatically managing is usually the default. If there are indexes, then it will automatically manage that. Click OK, and go back to the library. And then here's what I have. So metadata and versioning, I see office and region. And if I expand on those, then it just shows me any of the values that have been tagged in the office fields in my actual library. And if I click on one of them, then it filters my whole library by that. And I think it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to click on it, but there it goes. And then I click on office to then take that off. And then same thing with region, I expand region, and then I can click west, and then it filters by that. So as you can see, if you have some metadata that makes sense to kind of navigate through your library with your metadata instead of just using, you know, the dreaded folders that we all love so much. Instead of just using those, you can actually just put all of your documents. So this could be just a long. This isn't a very long library, but if you imagine this is a library with a bunch of documents, hundreds of documents. Instead of having your users have to click inside a folder, click inside a folder, click inside a folder to get to their document, you can turn this metadata navigation on, and they can use the metadata to navigate through and find what they need. So it just makes it a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit easier on search as well to get to your documents and pull them into the search query. And then we have the key filters right down here. So I have key filters where I can apply and clear them, and then here's where the drop down. So I can choose, I chose region, which is a column here, and I can choose south and then apply it. And then now it's applied to my library, and I can clear that. So those are two options. You do not have to use both, so I can go back to my library settings if you don't, because in my opinion, is key filters looks a little clunky. It just doesn't really fit the screen very well, and I'm sure the branding guy is like, yeah, Ryan probably agrees on that.
It's a pain to style around that thing if people want to use it.
Yeah, it isn't. It's not a very attractive a piece here.
It's really not.
They definitely need to do something to kind of slim that. I even just like the way the box is kind of. It's a little long. This you would think that the apply and clear would be underneath. I don't know. It's just there's some issues for sure. So I'm going to turn that off. Go back over here and turn that off. And then go back to the library. And now we just have the metadata navigation. And yes, you see that a lot of times I've had this question, and I'm sure, Ryan, you have too. By default, it is underneath your quick launch. So if you have a quick launch that goes on forever down the page, then guess what? Your metadata navigation is going to be all the way down there.
Yeah, we've actually had to fix that for some people for that exact reason. There's a control that controls all that, and you can actually move that above in the master page, the quick launch control. So there's one little trick.
That's great. Good to know.
Custom bringing. Yeah, you can't actually move that. It just has to involve editing the master page.
Right. Yep, that's good for people to know, though, definitely. So it is a possibility, just not an out-of-the-box possibility. All right. So I also have column default view value settings. So I can switch over. And basically the way this works, it's like setting a default value of a column. It's similar if you were just to create a column and set the default value. Like, let's say if I create a column here, and I go down to default value and set this. It's kind of similar to that, but it allows you to manage all the default values on a higher level. So if you wanted to see for the set default values across multiple columns at once, then I can go to column default value settings here, and I can go ahead and I can put in the default values. And this is just pulling some columns that I could add. So audience, incident date, and incident ID. These are just some of the columns that were in this library from the different content types I have. And you can see that it tells you that it's used in what content type it's used in here. And I can click on this and then set a default value. Use the default value here, and you can also set the default values on folders. So this will work, unlike the per location views. I've done this before. And so if I click on 2015 and I want, let's say, let's do benefits. And I want the audience to always be manager for any document which is a content type that's placed in the benefit 2015 or benefit folder, not 2015, just the benefit folder in general. I want it to be tagged with the manager as the default. So then that way, whenever a document's uploaded there, it will always have the default value of manager. So you can set that at different levels as well. So let's say if you had one thing that you might want to do is if you were doing a large, maybe you're migrating from like a file share to SharePoint, and you've set up a bunch of libraries, and so you're depending on maybe some your admins or your kind of end users to move their documents in. But let's say you don't really trust them on putting in the metadata correctly. We've all been there. But you're just kind of worried that maybe they're not going to tag the right metadata, or maybe they'll forget or whatever. You can actually go into your library, set up some of these default values for this specific library or a specific folder in the library, and that way whenever they put the documents in, it automatically gets tagged with that, and then you don't have to worry about it. And so that way, let's say if you had a library where there was a department field called, had HR in it, then it'd automatically get tagged there. But then maybe you had another library for finance, then you could change it to say finance. And you can kind of manage and save them a little bit of time from having to enter that in themselves. So that's just another way you could use the column default values. All right. Let's see. So we have about 20 minutes left. I told Laura that I would try my best to get to an hour because we know that Laura is awesome at filling up an hour. I struggle a little bit more than she does, I think. Alright, so let's see. If you guys are watching, feel free to, if there's anything that you're curious about, just any of the lists or library settings, it's kind of what our focus is. We're kind of talking about some of the lesser used ones today. So if you have any questions or if you're curious about any of these, even if it's something that we've done a power hour on before, we can still definitely talk about it, so feel free to put that into the Q&A box for sure. What about you guys on the call? Any specific settings or anything that you either liked or had issues with before, or are curious about?
I wouldn't say necessarily that, but I do think that there is a lot of power hidden in here that people don't realize. Like,
yeah,
we have sort of a corruption in the way we think about putting stuff into SharePoint because of the way we use Windows. And because it makes things like folders available, people just sort of default to their old habits. But there's a whole lot of stuff, in everything you just showed everyone that would make their lives a lot easier managing stuff. Like, people come up with a lot of questions about, the 5,000 item view limits and things like that. But a lot of that stuff takes care of it because it's not exactly a view, but it's a way of categorizing stuff in a way that makes sense where you don't hit those view limits as easily because you've subdivided your information a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of that's a lot of whenever I talk to a client that has hit those limits and is curious about what to do, a lot of it is just taking a step back and kind of reorganizing the library, using things like the information management policies as well to kind of archive stuff out after a certain amount of time, really just kind of looking how they're using it, because there's definitely easy ways to avoid doing that. You just have to kind of do some planning ahead of time, which a lot of people, like you said, they don't do. They just dump the files in straight from a shared drive or another library or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot you can do if you just plan a little. All right, one thing I wanted to talk about, which is just for lists, but it's something that I just thought about as a kind of another lesser known setting of a list or library. I'm going to create a list really quick. Let's just add an app. And I'll just create a custom list. So with a list, one of the neat things that you can do, not with a library, so keep this in mind, it's just for lists. I can go to list settings, and I can go to advanced settings in my list. And I have this item level permissions here. So this is pretty key. A lot of people do not know this exists, and they ask for it. So somebody will say, how can I do such and such? And I'll be like, well, you can just do that right inside your list. So basically what this does here is there's two different options. So you have read access and create and edit access. So this, no matter what your permissions are on your list, so let's say if you give, like, this is a list that everybody needs to use. So this list that everybody has contribute access to it. So like your whole domain has all your domain users have contribute access. But you need to manage it a little bit further than that, a little bit more securely than that. So here I can specify that if it's read access, that they can read all items, or they can read items that were created by them only. So that's an option. Most of the time, though, we usually look at this, especially because if they have contribute and they're adding things to this list. So this right here, create and edit, says they can create and edit all items, which is the default. That's what we normally have on any list or library. But with this list here, I can set it so they can create items and edit items that were only created by them, or they can create and edit none. So that's just kind of like taking away that permission. So this one in the middle is really important, because if you think about that, what it's basically saying is that I will come in here as user A to Power Hour members, and I will only see, even though I have full contribute, I can contribute to this, but I will only see the things that I created. So think of things like submitting some kind of a form for a travel request or some kind of other submission IT ticket, like a help desk. Like I often use this for like a little help desk ticket list. So they can come in here, they will submit the information, and they will only see their own stuff. Unless they are, if they have full control, this wouldn't apply to them. So the people that are admins on the list would be able to see everything. But those that are just having contribute and less than that, they would only see the items that were created by them. So they wouldn't be able to see like user B's submission at all. So just something I wanted to point out, because this is another feature that we often see is missed. And as you can see, we also have things in the, and I have some questions, so I'm going to look at those in just a second. So attachments to list items are disabled or enabled. So you can actually, if you don't want anybody to add attachments, you can disable that. The make new folder that we talked about earlier icon, so you can turn that off. Search, allow items from this list to appear in search results. If for any reason you do not want this list to appear in search results, you can flip that to no. You can turn quick edit on and off. So there's a lot of options that you can do here with lists and with libraries. All right, let's take a look at questions. So Paul asks, is there a library setting that keeps users from uploading documents, or do you have to do this with user permissions? Let's see, is there a library setting that keeps users from uploading documents? Yeah, you would probably, the read permission obviously will do that. Another thing that you could do is just limit, I'm trying to think. You could limit the content type that's available in the library so that maybe it's only just like a folder or something. But no, I think you would still be able to upload. Yeah, it's probably anything that you would be able to do to limit them besides just limiting them to be a read permission is going to be a little MacGyvery anyways, and probably won't be 100% the way to go. Probably just more of a workaround to stop them. So probably your best bet for that is just to set them to be read only. All right, so thanks, Paul, for that question. And then Josh asks, I often hear people say to avoid folders in SharePoint 2013 if at all possible. Sounds like you and Steven disagree. Do you often have customers that successfully use folders without becoming just like a network share? I mean, we definitely agree that you should avoid using them. So I want to make that clear. However, we also work with a lot of clients where we know that that's not realistic. Even though we say don't use them, don't use them, don't use them, or avoid using them, we know that there are times that you have to use folders. So the best thing to do is to keep the amount of levels that you have in your folders low. So that would be 1 to 2 levels of folders, and then also to do things like we were talking about earlier with, using these different view settings and using metadata navigation if you can to avoid using folders, and then also looking at things like information management policies and just really kind of planning it out if you do absolutely have to use folders for different reasons. And maybe even depending on what the folder does, maybe you can go with a document set instead of a folder if it fits, because that's another thing that you kind of have to understand how document sets work and what their purpose is to know if it's even a right fit for that. The reason that we say to avoid using folders, and I'll let Steven, you can definitely jump in here, but the one reason is that it's going to, the longer a path is to a document, so like as you go from a folder within another folder within another folder, it's going to be harder for search to get to that information, and it's going to be harder to get into the index as well. And Steven, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I understand where his question's coming from, but I really didn't mean to encourage the use of folders so much. I was really talking about the other tools that you mentioned, like the metadata and things like that, so that you can avoid using folders the way people do in Windows, where people are just used to dealing with files in that way. Like, you put file in the library, you put a folder in there, and you just dump things into categories that way. But if you can use something instead of a folder, like the metadata, I think that's by far preferable. That way it allows the information to be presented in a way that makes sense sort of automatically, instead of somebody having consciously, chosen, like it goes into this folder or something. If they do something like they put in a customer, and that becomes the metadata that you use to categorize things, instead of somebody having to put it in the folder with the customer's name, if it's one of the columns, it gives you a lot more flexibility in the end.
Yeah, and it's going to lead you, especially with 2013, since you mentioned 2013, we have all of these new search features. So we have things like the content search web part, which is an awesome out-of-the-box feature that you can use to build different solutions. And it's going to be really hard if everything's dumped in folders. It's going to be hard to use those types of features. Whereas if it was a metadata, it was a column, whether it's managed metadata or regular site column or something, you could easily use that information in a content search web part or in different ways to build a solution. So for example, let me show really quick, kind of just give you an idea. Let's see. Let me go over to IE. I can't remember if this thing was, I knew it was broken at one point, so let's see. Oh, it's working. Okay. So for an example, just a quick one, this is something I built so that basically I have forms that have been loaded in libraries all throughout my site. Now, granted, I could have just had my users, I could have created a folder for finance, a folder for legal, a folder for HR, and in a library, then just had them dump all their forms in there. But then they'd always have to go to that library, they'd have to click inside the folder, they'd have to kind of dig inside there to find it. Whereas in this one, I just basically had them load their forms and then they tagged it with what department it belonged to. And then with the search features in 2013, I was able to create this refiner view here so they can come in, they can look at all the forms across my entire site collection, they can filter by the department, which they would not have been able to do if this department thing was a folder. So they can filter that, and then they can get to documents and stuff. So you just have more, if you're leaning more towards metadata and not leaning towards or using folders as much, you just have more options for sure. And I think he had a follow-up. So Josh says, thanks, glad I've been avoiding folders. You mentioned information management policies. Have you done a session on this? If not, it would be a good future session. I think we have done one, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think we just did one recently. We can...
Yeah, we covered that in one of the sessions a few weeks ago as part of a document management solution. We didn't go super in depth in it due to time, but we did cover what's possible and how to configure the settings.
That was your setting. That was your session, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'll do, Josh, I'm going to put 2 blogs in the showcase, and I'm going to put the link to Kevin's presentation as well. So check that out, and let us know if you want us to go in more in depth, and we'll be happy to do so. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. If you guys will keep an eye on the questions for me, I'm going to grab some stuff to share in the showcase so that they can get these links here. All right. So is everybody excited about the Super Bowl?
Wonder if the crowd will be waving like, pressure gauges.
Yeah. All right.
That's football, right?
That's football.
Got it in one.
Or sports ball, as my wife likes to call them all collectively.
All right, so I'm putting in the 2 blogs so you guys can check these out. These are the 2 blogs, Laura's blog and Cameron Dwyer's blog. Hopefully I'm saying that right. So both of those are about the per location views and issues with those and the workarounds. And then now I'm going to grab the YouTube link for us for Kevin's last one there. And feel free to still be putting questions out there. We got a few minutes. We'll be happy to answer them. It does not have to be related to today's topic. And actually, since we have a few minutes, we have about 20 viewers, so 20 people out there. Let us know some topics that, if there's any specific, are you having any issues with SharePoint? Are there any specific topics that you're interested in? It does not have to be business user. We do have, as you've heard, we have an administrator on our call here. We have a branding guy on our call. On our session here. So even if it's not just a business user out of the box topic, feel free to put it in there because we would definitely we're very open to having those kinds of sessions as well, if it's helpful for folks. Trying to find the playlist here for our power hours, and also there is on our YouTube page, if you go to the playlist, we do have all of our power hours in one playlist, so we keep that pretty well updated. So you can get to those as well. All right, last link. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you guys can grab those, and that'll give you some extra help. All right, I don't see any other questions, so we can go ahead and wrap up. I don't think we have do we have a topic for next week? Do you guys have any? Are you guys planning on anything yet that I may have missed?
I don't know if we have a solid one yet or not.
Okay. So we'll get as always, we'll get a couple days ahead of time, we will get the event posted for next week. And like I said, if you have any suggestions, feel free to let us know. You can just comment on YouTube and let us know if you have any suggestions. We typically check those as well. If not, if there's no more questions, then we will see you next week. Have a good rest of the week and a good weekend. Bye.
See ya.